Okay, here we are, Thursday mornings, QT conversations. Julie's buzzing, and I am very mellow. And that's because I just participated in my son's equine therapy. And so I've been standing in a field in the sun and the wind, stroking horses for the last hour. And it was an absolute joy. And I'm hoping that what we're going to do is bring some of that centeredness into our conversation today. Helen Osmond is in the room, but she is going gently and making herself a lemsip because she's not feeling very well. And one thing I know about these conversations is if you're feeling low, they raise you up. If you're feeling dysregulated, they help you to feel more regulated. And actually, that's sort of the topic for today. So it's been a really exciting week in Qualified Tutor this week because in addition to announcing and running the first info session for the postgraduate certificate in professional tutoring that Qualified Tutor is developing in partnership with the University of Worcester, we've also been running a 3-day workshop on supporting students with SEND. And that's because I needed to create a self-paced course, and I hate self-paced courses. And the last self-paced course that I recorded, I did it in a room all by myself, and I don't love it. And I know that other people find it helpful, but it always leaves me feeling cold because I believe that learning has got so much more energy and power when it's in community. So this new course that we've been recording this week, and today's day 3, the final day, will be a presentation on supporting students with SEND, learning alongside the qualified tutor community. And that will be a real bonus for anybody who's following that course because they get to hear from the wisdom of the people in the room. And somebody actually just messaged me yesterday and said, it is a privilege to be in a room with such wise and experienced educators, which meant the world to me because if we're doing that for each other, then something's going very, very right. So today's conversation will be about thinking about ourselves as learners and thinking about what works for us as learners. So the first question, Julie, and you're going to have to work very hard today, my darling, is what does good CPD look and feel like? But first you need to unmute.
Sorry, that's because the dog heard someone walk past.
Someone walked past.
Somebody walked past. So he's gone a little bit loopy. I know what it should look like. I'm not
Oh,
sure that it's very easy to, I don't think it's very often experienced.
it's a precious thing.
Yeah. So ideally, good CPD is going to be something that moves you forward. But that means that it has to take account of where you are, and we're not all in the same place. So how do you move everybody forward if you're at a range of starting positions?
Okay. Tell me more about what it looks and feels like.
It feels tailored to you as you experience it. What does it look like? I'm not sure. It can be that conversation you had last night with another tutor where they went, oh, did you know about this? Because that's good CPD, right? But that's not at all structured. I think structured it's probably what I'm trying to say. Structured CPD is generally naff. Sorry, it is. Because it has to try and be everything to all people, and it can't be.
Helen, I
I
want
don't
to hear from you as soon as you're ready. Julie, you've given us plenty to think about there. I'm reflecting on, are you doodling?
know. I've just got my
I also
out.
I want a notepad. Hold on. I was craving a doodle, that's why I asked you. Helen, are you okay to answer the question?
Yeah, I can attempt to answer the question. What was the question?
Yes. The question was, what does good CPD look and feel like? And Julie said, it feels like it fits. Yeah, it feels tailored to me and where I'm up to right now. And structured CPD doesn't usually feel like it's made for me, but a good conversation with a colleague might well feel like the most helpful CPD. And it will be interesting to think about why that might be, why a recommendation of a resource or an approach dropped to you by a colleague might be more effective. And we'll look at what that means as well than structured CPD, which is NAF.
So when you sort of put the question out, what does good CPD look like? The word that came to mind for me was collaborative, which kind of, I think, ties into what Julie was saying, that if it's with people who can look in from the outside, because sometimes it's difficult to see our own challenges. If it's with people who know us and know what we're struggling with, that then the recommendations, then the things that we do together are more tailored, they're more appropriate for us. So yes, that could be a self-paced course, but the right self-paced course, because somebody has said you'll find this helpful, is worth more than just me going and grabbing something, because I don't know if that's going to be helpful and worth my time. But if somebody I know has done it, or somebody I know has recorded it, or has taken part in it, then it becomes it's trusted more and more relevant to where I am.
Do you think that you approach that CPD differently when it's come with a recommendation? And therefore, you get more out of it because you're expecting to find it helpful?
I don't know.
I'll come back to you because I feel like you're gone. Yeah.
I'm just mulling on it a little bit. I don't know if I'd take more from it knowing that it was a recommendation, but I might be more inclined to prioritize it,
Ah, okay. To get it done,
get it done. To just
make
go,
time for
More,
it.
more inclined to try it in the first place.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's not the doing of the course, because the course itself, if I picked one randomly, might be really useful, or whatever it is that I'm taking part in. But doing it with either with somebody else, so that there's a communal aspect, or somebody knowing if it's a live thing, knowing that somebody else is going, I'm more likely to go with them if it's an in-person thing.
Is that a strategy? I use people as a strategy. I am better at revising or getting tasks done when there's somebody else aligned with me. Is it a strategy that you need someone next to you? Is it because it's harder, you find it harder to study alone?
No, because I think sometimes I can do it on my own, and if I'm interested enough, I will do it on my own. But there are times when doing it together can be helpful.
Julie?
I don't have a problem doing it on my own. My problem is more fitting it in. I need a deadline. If I haven't got a deadline, it's not going to happen.
So there's something about self-paced that it's too flexible. There's no
For
deadline.
me, yes. I'm not saying it's the same for everyone, but yeah, if there's no deadline, there's always tomorrow.
There's that thing about urgent and important, isn't there? So if you had a student that you felt that there was a specific resource that you needed to learn about, or a specific approach or diagnosis or anything else, and you knew that you were meeting them on a Thursday, you would take that as a deadline.
Yeah, probably.
So important and urgent.
Yeah.
I want to go back to, I think that's a really juicy question that we just touched on there for a second. What do you have to bring to make CPD effective, in addition to sandwiches?
That's a good question, isn't it?
How do you have to show up?
Ready.
Oh, what does readiness look like?
Same thing that we ask when our students turn up. We want them to be ready.
Go on.
We want them to be able to focus on what we're teaching them. So for CPD, we want to be able to focus on what we're being taught, what we're learning. We want to be in a place where we can action it, rather than it just being a list of stuff that then goes to a pile and isn't touched on for 4 years. And then you find it in your office, which you've been clearing out.
Are you literally reading my mind?
No, I did it the other day and I found maths comp notes and LTF notes from the first time round, and I'm going, that's 3 years out of date now. And I didn't necessarily do anything about it now. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes we aren't going to do anything. We're not in a place to do that. So that's why the choice of CPD.
What does do mean?
Whatever
What
it
do you
is.
need to do with it?
Well, if it's a CPD training on how to make a lead magnet, then at some point you would like to make a lead magnet. And it only took me 3 years. But it's out.
Another 3.
That's
okay. So if it's a how-to, then there should be an action associated with it. What if it's just a sort of, and because I was thinking about the algebra tiles training, and I was thinking, well, if you don't use algebra tiles, or if you don't tutor maths, then is this not suited to you and a waste of your time? Could be. But I can sort of see how there'd be an argument for, making learning more concrete in any context, that I could then, if I was in the right mindset, if I was in a really generous mindset, I could take the principle and rearrange it to fit me. It would take a bit more thinking. Julie, sorry, go ahead, Helen.
I'd say that probably then might not be something I was going to invest a lot of time into, because having that generous mindset and having the space to partake in the training and then adapt it to what I'm looking for is going to be more energy than I currently have. It's not that I don't have it in the future, but right now, particularly in this season, anything that I am consuming needs to be exactly what I need, rather than me having to go and it would be the inverse, I guess, for me, would be to go to an English training and then see how that would apply to me, because an algebra tiles training session would be great. In fact, I've run algebra tiles training sessions on how to do it. Julie, you were at it.
I was thinking this is a really
you were there.
Serendipitous, is this the word I want? That Julia, you choose algebra tiles as your example, because I went to Helen's algebra tiles training.
Oh, you do not tutor maths?
No, I do science.
Okay, go on.
But science requires rearranging equations, which is algebra with fancy dress on, right?
Adjacent.
So that's a good word, isn't it? So I went, and it was really useful, and it was good. No, it was really good. It was informative. Was it useful for me? Can I use it in my lessons? Probably not. But I wouldn't know that if I hadn't looked at it.
Oh.
And you know what we're teaching them. So if they're working with a maths tutor, they might be using these skills.
Yeah.
So it's not bad CPD to know what the other subjects are teaching us.
Yeah.
Teaching us.
In actual fact, I'm going to be very anonymous at the moment. There is another tutor, and her and we both tutor a mutual student, and we've done a couple of sessions together so that we can tie the maths and the science together.
You double teamed.
Really good fun.
Did the student cope? I would find that so overwhelming as a student.
I think the fact that we both tutor the student already, so she's aware of the two of us. She knows the two of us. She knows that the two of us know each other. It was.
But do you twinkle at each other? The group dynamic of that is quite complex.
Probably, yes.
And does she feel included or excluded by that?
Included.
Oh, okay.
Yes, definitely included.
I bet you a tenner she'll become a tutor in 10 years' time from an experience like that.
Don't know. I might take you up on that.
Okay. Yeah. Either way, we all win. And you understood the reason why I would suggest such a thing would be, and I'm not a betting person, but the reason why I would suggest such a thing would be that we know that people often choose careers where they've had a positive experience. So my physiotherapist needed physiotherapy as a child. My ENT had a hearing issue as a child. These are real examples in my life. So if so, then having a wonderful tutor that really inspires you and knows what's what is a really, it's a lovely model. It's a lovely role model. But to go back to that question of what good CPD looks and feels like, we've just said something about bandwidth. Yeah, you have limited bandwidth during exam period, and yet you're here. And you're here because with your LEMSIP, you know that you will walk taller afterwards. And that's because, I believe, it's because you get to speak and be heard. There's something about putting yourself in the learner mode that is really energizing for us.
I think then we can still overwhelm ourselves with it. Not that it's good stuff. It's not necessarily that it's not good stuff. It's when we're doing it and the timings of it. And it is always good. Actually, I think I did a LinkedIn post on it recently about becoming the learner again. It's a good thing to do. I think I made play plates. It's good to become the learner again and put ourselves back in those shoes and to learn and to develop and to think and to do all those things. But if all we do is the CPD, then or we do too much, then it becomes overwhelming. So again, it's still a choice of wisely choosing where to invest that bandwidth. And I say this in the light of summer coming, and several people I've spoken to have got jobs that they're going to do over the summer because we're not in the middle of exam period, and it goes a lot quieter.
Do you mean jobs or tasks?
Well, for some people, it's a mix of that. I'm going to go do some CPD on how to do this over the summer because I don't have the time to process how to do that in February through to June because it's just too busy with that. And yes, some of them are practical tasks about admin and systems and all those sorts of things. But some of it will be, I'm going to go and do some training in that quieter time. Some CPD, whatever it is. I mean, I will probably partake in the one that you're doing over the summer because I've not been able to do it live over the half term. But
you're going to be shouting at the screen.
Well, probably. It's better than shouting at children. No, maybe it might be a bit both, but that's a different thing. But I will have more bandwidth and time to do it then. But even then, I will be choosing my choice wisely because it's also a rest period for me.
Okay, so there's a lot of agency involved in this, right? There's a lot of you planning your own CPD, what to study and when to study it, based on things that need to get done, based on things that you might want to be able to do in the future, based on things that you've never done, like, did you say clay pottery?
I made 2 plates.
I'm so happy for you. Are they lovely? Are they flat?
They are flat. They have botanical imprints in them. There was a whole thing that I did with a friend. So it was nice to relax, but it was also good to not be the expert.
Really, really healthy. And in addition to the planning of it, or as part of the planning of it, we're really talking about metacognitive strategies. Because what you're doing is you're relating on your mindset as a tutor and you're optimizing the use of your time. So you're saying, I can only concentrate on this material and give it my best or make good use of it or it be a worthwhile use of my time if I'm in these mindsets. Yeah. Jenna, we love that you're here. And again, it's that thing of why you're here. Yeah. So we're talking at the moment about good CPD. And Julie started off by saying good CPD feels like it fits. And self-paced, structured, not self-paced, structured training rarely feels like it fits. Many of us have had the experience of being in a planned inset that doesn't feel relevant. The famous scenario for that is the early years team in any school are always plonked in front of secondary or key stage 2 training that doesn't fit the way they work at all, and all they want to do is leave the room so that they can go back to their space, plan their space, and get on with their work. And that sort of disrespect of their time and needs is just the worst. It's the worst, and it's such a turn off, because I can tell you as a school leader, running training for people who don't want to be there is the worst thing in the world. And all the bad behaviors that you see in the classroom get performed in those insets. They're texting under the table, they're leaving early, they're putting their coats on before you've finished.
They're carrying on conversations and not
100%. You go, you set them a task, you wander around, they're not on task, all of those things. It's the worst. It's the absolute worst. We're actually worse. We're worse than so many of our students because we know what we're doing and we know better. So Jenna, the question that we opened up with, and I'd love to hear from you, is what does good CPD look and feel like? And I want a really sensory answer. I'm trying to drop you into a specific mindset.
It feels full, in a very like sensory way.
Hello.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
And you. Thank
Bye.
you.
Very reassuring. We are pleased with those little visitors. Very nice.
It's all happening today and
Good.
yesterday. I think that for me personally, I feel physically full in a warm, round way. So I have synesthesia, which makes thinking about these things in a sensory way a little bit curveball for other people sometimes, because to me it has colors and shapes and also those physical sensations, a bit like a hug from you, Julia. And I think it just scratches the itches. And I think that when you've got a group of staff together, whether in a school or another setting, I do think yellow and purple are like kind of swirly, and round.
Those were my
There's no
cousins growing
pointy
up.
edges.
That is so funny. I'll tell you another time about that. I used to want to be brown, but I wasn't. I was purple and yellow.
I think it suits you in so many ways. And I do think that there's a certain amount of choice and autonomy and investment and kind of that spark of joy. In some ways I dislike that phrase, but also it's very, very accurate. I do think that it can be, I don't know how it would work in much larger settings, but I do think in smaller settings as well, you can have a certain amount of cooperative like sharing of stuff. You don't have to all attend every single thing, but you can attend the things that you're interested in and feedback and share it, and maybe someone else will want to do it or have some other opinion on it and kind of co-work a lot of it. And I feel like a lot of that we do at QT, like even looking at the Sen course, like and workshopping that and having a go at some of that, the elements where we get to come back and go, oh, I learned this, or I learned that, or I really want to learn this or that and the other. And being able to have that collaborative approach, I think, is a lot part of that CPD. And I mean, I count these sessions as my part of my CPD because I learn so much. And I do think that that whole thing of it having to be really formal, really structured, really corporate, very, very school isn't helpful. Like, yeah.
And you also want it to feel purposeful.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you don't want it structured, but you do want it full.
I do think that purposeful is an interesting word, because it can be a bit of a misnomer.
Go on.
Because it's not about, oh, I can't remember what phrase you used. ages ago, we had a similar conversation
know what you
about
mean.
learning and CPD and stuff, and the idea that it doesn't have to be purposeful in the sense of measurable or with a specific outcome in mind. You can do something
It's like
because
a
you're
scientist
curious.
going to algebra tile training.
Yeah. And like doing something and learning something of personal interest that you can't necessarily directly fit, but because you are an educator, it's part of your curiosity as a learner, and it's feeding the learner in you as well. And I think that balance of seeing specific outcomes as well as it just being something juicy is really important. Sometimes we do have to do the things that are boring and that we're not so keen on in order to have balance. But it's the same for the kids.
So we spoke just before you arrived about what you have to bring to make CPD brilliant. You show up
Completely unrelated, but I've got to show you it.
Lovely. You do have to bring a squash and a curly whirly straw. And that's really you have to bring willing. So I ran the SEND course for my daughter's SEND department in her school.
Ooh.
And the Senko gave me a heads up, and she's like, in the group, in the cohort of LSAs, there's one of these and one of these and one of, I'm like, I know, because there always are. Yeah. There's always an owl, and there's always a sheep, and there's always a donkey. Okay. And that wonderful donkey, who could easily be an owl in a different context, was saying things like, what about when they're just being lazy?
I'm not sure I understand this, the animals.
Okay. An owl is associated with
Learning?
wisdom.
Okay.
A sheep is associated with
Following?
And the donkey is associated with
Kicking off and causing chaos.
being
Okay.
being a stubborn so-and-so. Okay.
Okay.
Now, but this person who was being the donkey in this context didn't mean to. And she started off by saying, every day is an opportunity for me to learn. But you could hear that she was telling herself. Yeah. And we did get somewhere together, but I think it was really interesting that she brought donkey into the room. She didn't have to be donkey, you know, and there's something about what we bring to a session. You texting under the table, how much are you going to get from the session? Jenna joined us yesterday in the SEND recognition. We were doing research, yeah. So Jenna could have written the book. And when we had our key takeaways at the end, Jenna said, actually, it was really interesting watching you discover this. And that was stunning, because that was you finding your learning from this environment that we'd created, that we'd co-created. And Julie, you said right at the beginning, I'm coming back to you, Jenna, because I can see you've got a thought. Julie, you said right at the beginning, it has to feel like it fits, but everybody's coming from a different place. So how do you make it fit for everyone? And I think the answer is co-creation. I think it is possible to create a learning context, but you have to show up as a learner and do your own work. You have to.
I think that is where the structured, mandated CPD that we may remember from school doesn't work, because 4 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon, I've got something else to do and you're making me be here. So yeah, you've not got my full attention because I don't want to be here.
Yes.
And how does that reflect on our students?
Can I tell you, yesterday I went to a gorgeous event at my daughter's school, and at the end there were a couple of, the deputy and the head girls were invited to speak, which already annoys me because, because my kid's never going to be a deputy or a head girl, and she's an absolute winner. She's just not that one. The head girl spoke for 15 minutes. She's a year 6 kid. So good on her, because that's hard and well done. And many of us couldn't do that. Unfortunately, the rest of the children stopped listening and started fidgeting. Then the adults stopped listening and started fidgeting. And when the head teacher, who was standing next to me, started talking to one of the class teachers in a voice that was clearly audible, Explain your jaw drop, please.
Disrespectful.
Disrespectful. What else?
Should know better.
Should know better. What
It's
else?
good chat.
She should have performed the behavior that she was expecting.
The head
But more than
teacher
that, hold
is
on, more than that. The kid was saying something really, really insightful that nobody was listening to. But she was bang on in what she was saying.
If it had been the other way round,
Mm-hmm.
if it had been the kids listening to the head,
Mm-hmm.
and the moment they started talking amongst themselves, they would have been out, end of line, detention, whatever the sanction is in that particular school environment. There was definitely a moment, I can have clear memories in primary school when I was not listening to the head teaching and got sent to the end of a line to stop me from talking with my friends. I was what, year
Why are
3?
you chatty, Helen? Why are you chatty?
I mean, it's so unlike me, isn't it? Actually, I'm more a good girl than chatty. That was about the only time I ever got told off for talking in assembly, that I remember. But yeah, it was a sign, it's a disrespect. You don't talk over the person that's addressing. And we would teach our children, in theory, to do that now, wouldn't we? If we are in a situation where somebody is addressing, then we would be encouraging them just to wait, to hold on. Now, obviously, that is some children. Smothering my child's face to stop her from talking in the middle of the sermon at church is probably a step too. It's not. We don't. But yeah, that's us.
Well,
We show that sign of respect if somebody's talking, don't we?
so there's a few things. She wasn't talking, she was teaching. That kid was teaching. She had something really valuable to say. And the fact that the head teacher was not able to drop into learner mode, I think was really informative. That's what she needed to do. She needed to model not respectful behavior, she needed to model learning. And she needed to drop out of the authority role and drop into the learner role. Jenna, go.
the thing that the thing that triggers something in me, or like emotes for me the most in that, is power. The person with the most power and influence in that room was that head teacher. And the moment that head teacher showed that that child was not worth listening to, the fact that that head teacher did not correct the already disruptive behavior, that to me is massive. And that breaks my heart.
I know it's massive and it's innocent and it's human, but it's definitely a mistake. And what did she do to the class teacher who was torn between not wanting to disrespect her boss and doing the right thing? Power
and authority is, and I kind of think that, just very quickly jumping back slightly, that's one of the differences with the way that we have these conversations and the way that people actually think about these things, is that we don't want that authoritarian approach. That doesn't work, but people still have power. There is always in these things a power imbalance, and there should be some power difference in that different people have different roles, have different responsibilities, have different influence, and that should be understood and transparently utilized. And what you were saying about how I reflected on yesterday's session, in that I got learning out of that, of other people learning, that is the entirety of my tutoring, of my education. And, you know, for anyone who's listening who doesn't know, my approach is very holistic. I work with young people as a governess or governor, where I support the social needs, the personal needs as well, in a lot more of that broad, comprehensive, holistic way. And it's always the same. That is where I am being both a learner and an educator, because every single person is different. It doesn't matter what their neurotype is. It doesn't matter anything. Every single person is different.
and has something to learn from. And what you're modeling there is that ability to show up and engage in any moment with the learning mode. You know how sometimes you're in that wonderful headspace and you can sit on the tube in London or on a train anywhere and people watch. Yeah. And you can just sort of like learn or see or notice or pay attention or absorb other people and their stuff. And there's that wonderful insight called sonder, which is when you notice that other people have their own lives and worlds going on equal to yours. And it becomes such a gorgeous thought experiment to open your minds in that way. And we used the phrase at the beginning of this conversation of being in a generous mindset. There's something about, because I could do that on the way out, and on the way back, I could be knackered and not be interested in anyone and be looking at my phone and all of those things, right? So we know that we've got expansive headspaces and we've got narrow headspaces. I want to use the last 10 minutes of our time together to bring in the word belonging. For me, CPD needs to make me feel welcome. I did a fiction writing course at the beginning of this academic year, and I hated every minute of it. And I didn't know that I hated it because I showed up with all my enthusiasm like I usually do, and I want to be the learner and I'll participate or I'll be quiet or anything you need from me. I will do the bit that I know how to do. But I did not feel safe in that room, and I persisted for 3 months, and I didn't get what I was hoping to get. And I don't know why it happened. I don't know where the misalignment was, but I definitely did not feel belonging. So let's talk about finding your place in a learning context and how that can be done. Julie, does the word belonging land right for you when you started off by saying tailored to and those things?
Yes, if we're talking about it, belonging, yes, for something that feels like it's meeting you where you are, but
well
certainly not for the mandated CPD that we have to sit through. So the right CPD, yes, belonging is the right word.
Good, thank you. And what does the implication, and I'm going to repeat the same question for you, Jenna and Helen, what does the implication of that mean in your tutoring context? Julie?
Is this where I say, when I do my interview, I always tell the student they're in charge? And if they don't like me, it's not going to work. And I'd rather they say so at the beginning, because they can veto tuition with me just as much as their parents can before we start.
Well, it's really interesting that you went from belonging to handing over authority, because those two things do have an interplay, don't they? Go on, what do you see?
But I want the students to feel that they belong in this relationship.
Yeah, it's like an opting in.
And I can't enforce belonging. It'd be so much easier if we could, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Fantastic. I've just been listening to Terry Pratchett's Witches Abroad, and the theme there is fairy tales, and the evil witch is enforcing everybody to be happy or else. And the phrase was, why do you need so many guards when everybody's so happy and smiling all the time? You don't realize it's the guards that are causing everybody to be so blooming happy all the time. So something about dropping back your authority, Julie, as the perceived educator, so that you're making space. It's like a dance. You're stepping back so that they can step forward, so that you can find a space where you belong together. Quite happy with that. Helen Osmond. Jenna, you know I always leave you to last. Helen Osmond, tell me about that word belonging. Does it resonate? And then tell me what all of this means for your students.
I'll be quick so that I've got let Jenna have time. Belonging to me is mine. So it's the CPD that fits me. It's the CPD that works for me. it's the CPD that's going to grow me. I think. And similarly then to Julie, the way that spills into tuition is that they're learning from me, and if I'm not the right fit, or if they're not learning the right stuff, then that's not going to be as beneficial for them. It's not going to be good tuition in the same way that we're reflecting on good CPD. It's not necessarily that what we're teaching is bad, but it's not what they're needing in that time and moment.
And so there's something about your expertise that enables you to find what it is that they're needing at that time and the moment and be that.
Yes.
Yeah, in order to do that thing that we talk about of meeting them where they are. And when it's about you and you're in the learner role, it's your CPD and it's about you. And that becomes quite wonderful when you're a mum of two normal young girls who, in all the normal ways, exhaust you. And so actually, learning becomes me time, which is so yum.
Yeah, even then I have to protect that me time. It can't
Yeah.
all be learning.
Yeah. So some of your me time, some of your recharging is CPD, and it feels deliciously selfish. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think so.
Jenna?
I think the other side of what Helen says as well. So everything that you just said, Helen, and the other side of it as well is that if you're not in the right headspace on that day or in that moment, or you're just a bit there, but everything else is perfect, there's still going to be a mismatch, right? Like, you can be an amazing match for the student and have the right content and all of that, but just not be in the right headspace yourself that day, the same as it is for our students. And I think the other thing that I feel like is pivoting us, we're flip-flopping back and forth as to, in our conversation, as to this is us as learners, this is us as educators, is that a bit like our conversations about leaders who don't participate. You can't be in one side of the role without understanding the other and maintaining that. You can't be a head teacher that never teaches and that never learns, because you can't actually, that's not a head teacher, that's just a head, right? And you lose everything below that. And I think that that's the theme that's coming through for me so much more today, is that we need to have an identity as a learner in order to have an identity as a tutor. And you can't not do both all the time, because the moment we stop doing both is the moment that we stop developing as tutors, as educators, as learners, as people, and we start to lose that me space. And I think that the fact that it's protected me time to undertake CPD, I think, is both important and very telling.
Yeah, yeah. And for me, I'm not very good at ring fencing time, but I am very good at mindsets, and reminding myself to have the mindset of a learner does feel really, really powerful. I'm going to wrap up this conversation now, which has been as beautiful as I'd hoped. And Dee, I'm going to close the meeting and then open it again for our recording students instead. I just wanted to give you a chance to wave at everyone. What's it all about? It's all about all of us in a sort of holistic, communal, bring your whole self, take responsibility, co-create learning with your students, and let them surprise you and let you surprise yourself. But only when we're in that generous, curious, reflective mindset do those things come together. So thank you for showing up. Helen, I bless you that you get a rest before your tutoring today. Julie, I'm so chuffed to see you. I hope you see you again next week. Jenna, welcome home. I missed you. And Dee, I will see you in just a mo. Everyone, see you soon.